Welcome to Risk Profile with Mark and Harris. Have you subscribed? If not, please do. So, Mark, who have you brought today?
Well, today we're going to be talking with Moody.
Moody.
It's kind of like an emotion, but not really.
Not okay.
Okay. No, Moody Heard. He has been with Mercury Fund for a long time and just left a big corporate cushy job to make your own way. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, it is. I still office with Mercury Fund and see them every day, but I am no longer an employee.
Yeah.
And I'm now running my own startup.
Officially living the dream.
Exactly.
So Risk Profile, we like to chronicle the stories of people that have taken the leap from cushy corporate to, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me? And so why don't you fill us in on the backstory?
Totally. I joined Mercury Fund, early 2018.
Wait, what is Mercury Fund?
Okay. Mercury Fund is an early stage venture capital firm headquartered in Houston, but invests all over the country. And with the key distinction that they stay off the coasts. So their portfolio companies are from Texas all the way up through the Great Lakes territory in the Midwest. And they really focus on enterprise software primarily. And so I joined Mercury Fund in early 2018. The fund's been around for about 15 years. They were initially a satellite fund for one of the premier kind of OG venture capital firms called DFJ. So if you've heard of names like Tim Draper, Steve Jurvetson, they found the general partners, gave them some money, and they started investing. So I joined, like I said, early 2018 as an analyst at the fund. And my job there is just looking at early stage software deals. So I'd start off just getting to know entrepreneurs. I was traveling to cities like Denver, Chicago, and other, like, spent a lot of time in Austin. We would find deals that we were interested in and start getting to know the entrepreneurs. That's how I got to know Mark. And then if a partner got really excited about a deal, we would just dive into it and spend weeks to months really digging into the team, digging into whatever data the company had at that point. Again, early stage companies, but typically had enough revenue and customer data for us to start to get a snapshot of what their growth looked like, and sort of what their like customer profiles looked like. And so that was my gig at Mercury Fund, and it was absolutely amazing.
So you left. Why'd you leave?
When I was at Mercury, the fund is thematic. And so we take a top-down approach to investing, which means like we will really dive into either an emerging business model or an industry vertical and just get to know everything about it. And so while I was there, I wrote investment theses for two different investment approaches. One was the construction vertical. So like, what are the opportunities for innovation in construction? Through that process, probably looked at 60 to 70 construction software deals. So we had a thesis for what we were looking for. And I was helping run that with one of the partners, Adrian Fortino. And the other investment thesis that I spent a lot of time on were tech-enabled services. So how do you rebuild a traditional services organization around technology? And good examples of that would be like a freight brokerage, right? Which is like, traditionally, it's a bunch of college graduates that sit in like a call center and just like call truckers all day. So in theory, you could use software to create some efficiencies around that and make those people who are making phone calls, more efficient, drive up revenue per service provider, and put competition out of business. So looking at those sorts of businesses led a deal early on called Spruce that is performing really well. And so through that, those really two like processes of digging into those themes, I was like, okay, there's this interesting dynamic in the construction space, which is all the labor is temporary, but they also need to be W-2 employees for some kind of esoteric reasons. And so there's this strange dynamic, and we were looking for a company to invest in that was helping solve this temporary labor, like high turnover issue. Couldn't find one. And so I just started building it on the side. And the partners, a couple months into building it, I kind of just as like a compliance measure was like, hey, I'm working on something on the side. Just wanted to let y'all know.
Yeah. One
thing led to another, and we ended up sitting down and they're like, well, why don't you go do this and we'll back you. So they invested in the deal and we raised some more money, and I've been off to the races since then. But just lots of top-down research is what led to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think the last couple of guests that we've had on here have all mentioned some element of preparation. I think the entrepreneurs get maybe a bad rap that they just kind of fly by the seat of their pants, or they just kind of dig in, or cross their fingers and jump.
No, those are the ones that fail, like me. Yeah, it's different. I just took off and it was terrible. Actually, no, that's not even true. I actually did prepare, it took some time, saved a bunch of money and everything, but didn't work.
So, but in preparing, walk us through, okay, there is a problem. I can solve it. Should I solve it? Like what was the decision tree there for you?
Yeah. It was, that's a good question. So one kind of like rule of startups that we broke is, and I personally disagree with this, but it's, it goes a long way. And you can look at like Mark and James's company, being a subject matter expert, especially if you're starting an enterprise software play, is important. It goes a really long way with investors and hiring key team members. Nobody on our founding team knows anything like about construction, or that's not true. We've learned a lot, but didn't know anything going in, like all just completely research driven. So that was a challenge at first. And so I was forced to ask the question, how do you mitigate that risk,
right,
of knowing basically nothing about the industry that you're trying to go in and revolutionize? And that was just, so I would wake up every day, go to construction job sites with my phone and just record interviews with the people that I thought were going to be our premier users, which were construction workers and their supervisors on the job site, and collected hundreds of hours of audio from them, would condense that into notes and try to basically come up with a story aggregating information from people who were experts. So that helped a lot. And actually, I think that one advantage that I would mention to investors early on was we don't know anything, and that's made us more intellectually honest coming in. And so we're not just coming in with our own experience. We're coming in with understanding how business models have worked in other verticals that are similar to this, but we're like a complete blank slate. And that has proven so far to, I think, have been true, but we're still pretty early. So de-risking the process through customer discovery was a huge piece of it.
Yeah.
And the other piece was like getting a team together from day one that I was really excited about, that I thought was smart enough to go in and figure out these like unknowns, since we didn't know much. And then besides that, just making friends in the industry who could advise us. And so we brought on some key advisors early on.
Awesome.
And that gave me comfort to leave a job that was actually like my dream job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who's on the team?
The team today is myself. So I really just bring some like kind of pattern matching from having seen startups previously. One of our co-founders is a guy named Vu Brown. So Vu was at Uber for 5 years and has this like, Vu is like one of the most interesting people in the world types. He helped launch Uber's market in Pakistan. So he was like leading the charge in Pakistan, grew their business to the largest rideshare company in the country, and then helped launch Eats throughout Latin America. And so he's got this, what Vu brings to the table, which is really cool, is like super strong operational background, where he was going to rickshaw drivers in Pakistan who didn't own a smartphone, didn't have a bank account, and was like, I'm going to teach you all how to make money on Uber. So there's like a lot of crossover there.
Yeah.
Getting into a market who hasn't traditionally used their mobile device in the context of their profession and like teaching that behavior.
Huh.
So he's got this great operations and growth background. And then Michael Orcutt is our lead engineer. He was an early engineer at Favor. He's brought on a couple of really strong engineers to support him. And he's just like a really solid, badass full stack engineer and total hustler, and is like architecting our software stack.
Wow.
So you have a problem. You recognize the problem intellectually. When did your heart like really buy into it?
Yeah. And it was, that's a good way to put it, because it was all intellectual at first. And I'm like, I think most entrepreneurs are intellectually curious people. It's like probably one of the most important components of being an entrepreneur. I started getting really bought in, I think that if I was encouraging someone who's like, I know I want to be an entrepreneur, one of the things I would encourage them to do is like go tell people you're going to be an entrepreneur, and then you kind of have to do it, or else you're gonna look like a sham. And so, I mean, I was staying up all night, every night, like outside of work, like every weekend.
Which is also a demanding job, I would add.
Yeah.
As an analyst for VC Group.
It was, yeah, it was a lot. And so my weekends were just like 48 hours straight, like just drinking energy drinks and staying up all night researching. I can't point to the exact like come to Jesus moment on when I was like, this is my calling for the next 5 years, but it was about a month-long period where I was just writing a plan, putting a deck together and talking to people about it. And it just became very tangible to me. And I felt a great sense of urgency for competitive reasons, as well as just like a whole series of reasons. I felt like this was the time for me to do it. And I felt like a very overwhelming calling to just be like, you should go do this now and not wait around for it.
So at a certain point, for compliance reasons, you went and told the fund that, hey, I'm working on this.
Yes.
And it sounds like they were very much on board with what you were pitching to them, or at least telling them about. Let's say hypothetically, first of all, how did that conversation go? And second, what if it had gone the other way? How would you have handled it?
This is unique to me, but one thing that was really important to me is the Mercury Fund team has like given me a ton of opportunity. And so it was important to me that I wasn't leaving them hanging, like leaving them high and dry. And so I really wanted their blessing in it, less like for their capital, but more just, I knew that it would go a lot further if they were excited about it and behind it. And so the first conversation, like I said, was just, hey, I want to make sure there's no like IP issues if I'm working on something on the side, you know? And they were like, no, that's fine. Everyone works on stuff here. Like everyone has a side project. Don't worry about it. And then, you know, the second conversation I think was like, oh, okay, this is what happened. I actually went and pitched this at my alma mater, which is Washington and Lee University. My boss, Blair, also went to Washington and Lee. So we had this entrepreneurship summit. Anyway, we went up there together, and I had told Blair like, hey, FYI, I'm going to be talking about this at the entrepreneurship summit. Cause I'm still close to the entrepreneurship professor there. And he saw the pitch and he was like, this is interesting. And when we came back, the conversation kind of started there about an investment.
Did you have the heart for the idea before that conversation or after that conversation?
Did I have the heart for the idea? Like, was I completely bought in at that point? Yeah, I would say, if I'm honest, I was kind of hoping that Mercury would get as excited about it as I was, because I knew that if they were, then it could help push us forward substantially. So at that point, like, but I also really didn't want to look like an idiot. I mean, you could really look like an idiot in front of your current employer if you're like, hey, I've got this fun idea that I'm working on the side, like, you know, but, and they're like, okay, tell me about it. And you're like, well, you know, you fall on your face in front of them. And then they're like, don't bring me stupid ideas like that anymore, which they would never say, but it was a thought.
Let's say they'd have done that. Let's say like you would have gone in there, pitched it to them, and they would have been like, why did we even hire this analyst? You know, like what if in the back of their mind, they're thinking that.
Yeah.
Like, what would you have done in that situation? Do you still commit to this? Or would you really have gone back and been like, should I really give up this potentially very lucrative cushion? I say cushion, but it's a very hard job over this potential opportunity.
Yeah. I think at that point in time, I was pretty bought in, and I had my friends around me supporting me. I had a lot of conviction in the idea, and I think I was going to jump anyway, but it's kind of hard to like lay out the counterfactual of if they'd completely shot it down, like the best investors that I personally know, if they were like, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard, I probably would have like gone back to the whiteboard, but I was pretty excited about it at that point. Yeah. So I was planning to go ahead with it.
So Mark and I, we've been rascals ever since we were kids. You know, we're always causing trouble, doing something. And this is apparent in our entrepreneurial spirit as well. We're always doing against the norm kind of things. So as a kid, did you ever do anything outlandish?
Yeah, I would say I was like the teacher's least favorite student, not because
Yeah, woo!
yeah. I think
five.
I actually set the record for the most citations in a given year at my middle school. And I was also, like I was somehow like balancing. I was a team captain on the football team, and I made good grades, but I was also in the principal's office all the time. And not for like really bad stuff, but just for like wanting to get laughs in class basically all the time. And
can relate.
and also just like doing stuff like, sneaking onto the third floor of like the convent building at Episcopal High School, which was off limits because it was like supposed to be haunted or something. And anyway, so I was like, yes, I was very much getting into trouble as much as I possibly could growing up. Yeah.
So how does that connect to what you've stumbled upon in terms of your entrepreneurial journey?
Mark, you could definitely speak to this as well. I'm also like hyper competitive, and I think that's like, I wasn't playing football because I played football through college as well. It was a super small school, but I loved playing because I love competing, and I didn't necessarily love the discipline part of it was really good for me. And, is like a huge part of who I am today, but I did it because I was competitive. Like I just liked competing against people. And so people have told me like, that's the worst idea ever. And frankly, I'm like, I love when people tell me that, because like, I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to go out and like absolutely crush this.
And I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah. and then I'm going to like remind you about it. So, it's kind of like the like flippancy towards authority, which there are people who I really respect, like the Mercury Fund guys. I have a tremendous amount of respect for, but I would say generally I'm kind of a little bit like, have a chip on my shoulder, and I'm gonna kind of do things my own way. And so I think that's helped a lot, because you don't take for granted what like people are telling you is a good or a bad idea. You just like, I've kind of most of my life just gone out and done things without permission. Yeah.
Doing
Perfect.
things without permission.
I like that a lot.
I don't know if that's the tagline for the show, or
No.
or if it's financial analyst has a heart. And I don't know what it is.
Oh man, that's good.
So who was apart from Blair? Who was the character that really you were like, man, I've got to get up the courage to go talk to this? Was it your parents? Was it like a close friend? Was it a different advisor? Like who was it that was the first like major hurdle in you telling somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question. The good news, and this is a theme also with a lot of young entrepreneurs, is like I don't have risk. Like I don't have a family necessarily that I need to make sure that I have a stable job for. And like, I'm fortunate that I'd saved a little bit of money and had some flexibility to go do this. And so back to not asking permission, I didn't ask many people for permission. The Mercury Fund guys were the guys that I really wanted to, just for validation, just that they would kind of, like I said, bless the enterprise. And beyond them, that's a great question. My family is amazing and really sweet. They understand what I'm doing now. I don't know that they necessarily understood it at first, but they were like supportive enough to just be like, yeah, go for it. That's awesome. So it was really my current employers, because I wanted to do the right thing by them.
Yeah.
And also wanted the validation on top of it.
Well, I know they're proud of you, because I heard about what you were doing through Aziz. And he's like, yeah,
nice.
man, you should talk to Moody. He's crushing it right now. He's really excited. And he was excited to tell me about what you're up to. And I think that's an anecdotal piece of information that it's really hard to collect independently, but whatever you're doing a good job of it.
Yeah. And not to overhype the Mercury Fund guys, they're not paying me or anything, but I will say like one of the things I loved about them is they fight for the home team. Like Aziz is really good at this. One of the things I learned from them was like, publicly praise the people on your team a ton. He's really good at that. So are the other guys. And that's like been a fun part about being part of their network, is when I was an employee, they hyped me up all the time. And now as a portfolio company CEO, they hype me up a lot too.
Yeah.
So Moody, you've taken this kind of disciplined football guy who's also a troublemaker, making good grades. Then you went to college, did well. Then you got into VC, did well. Now you're doing your own thing. What does the future look like for you? I mean, it looks great, but what is it?
Yeah. I see this as being like a 3 to 5 year journey potentially, and like plus maybe. But I will say, we started this. One of the things that I saw with portfolio companies at Mercury Fund was, like there are liquidity windows when you start a business, and it's good to keep your head kind of above water and like watch for opportunities as they come. Like where does my business end up? It could be the case that we IPO, but that's statistically like highly unlikely. And so, if I'm just kind of like guessing, it's going to take us several years to build a business, like a real business, and prove what we're doing. And what we're doing is not as complicated as what Q Engineering did, but it's also not simple because there are a lot of stakeholders involved. And so our product is getting there. We have an MVP that we think is getting close to product market fit, but it's going to be several years before like we've really accomplished anything. If I'm looking out 10 years, it would be amazing what we're doing, just to like summarize it, is we're trying to build like a home for construction skilled labor, and like a place where you are guaranteed to have a job that basically we're making sure that you're earning at the highest rate possible in the market. And that doesn't really exist today. There's no like clearinghouse for labor. Unions left back in the 80s, which kind of played that role. And we think that a platform approach can kind of come in and fill part of the void that unions have left. That's a pretty big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's something that, that's like our mission is to build like the platform for construction labor, starting in Texas. And we're just like really focused on Texas. That you could spend a lifetime doing that. And if you like, this market is going to continue to grow. It's basically growing like a little faster than population growth is in Texas, which is expected to continue growing, as is US population. So I could spend a lifetime doing it. I've also got a heart for some kind of like, there are like several social issues that I'd like to spend time focusing on that actually dovetail with the business. But I can see myself after this going into, helping with policy reform and in certain like hot button areas that I'm interested in. So if I were to pivot out of entrepreneurship, it'd probably be towards that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Moody. This has been great. This has been a lot of fun.
So, what's your parting message? Like, what are you saying? You got somebody riding in their car, going to work. What do you say to them?
Oh man, that's a great question. I was actually just having a conversation like that on the way over here, and I would say, especially when you're young, it's not like you should be taking risk. And I would say, even if you're someone like, especially if you're someone who grew up with like quote unquote privilege, like very loaded term, but like depoliticize it. If you have like resources behind you, a good education, I personally think that you have like a personal responsibility to go take a risk that creates opportunity for other people. And so I would say, if you can, and you have something that you're passionate about, like go do it, whether it's creating art that makes the world a more beautiful place to live in, starting a business that employs people, helps your customers, you name it, like take on the risk. And like usually opportunity, like capital, good employees, they follow smart, passionate people. So that would be my parting message, is just go jump into it.
All right, Moody, where can our listeners find you?
we have a Twitter account, BuildForce Jobs or something like that. And we're on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. We've got a blog post on our website, and feel free to just download the app, poke around, and give us feedback. The app is called BuildForce. It's in iOS and Android.
Well, thank you, Moody. This has been a pleasure. You are actually not moody at all. A delight to hang out with. And to everyone listening, please subscribe. It really helps us. And once again, thank you, Moody. Thank you for being on there.
Thanks, guys. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Go be someone.